I call Scott Simpson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. It's a pleasure to rise in this third reading debate on the Environment Canterbury Transitional Government's Arrangements Bill. Because as a non-Cantabrian, sir, I've come to understand how important the water and sensible governance of Environment Canterbury is to not only Cantabrians but to all of us as New Zealanders. And sir, I listened very carefully to the speeches of my two senior colleagues, the Minister, the Honourable Nick Smith, and the Honourable Louise Upston, in their contributions to this debate. They gave very measured, careful, thoughtful presentations on the justification and the rationale for this transitional legislation being presented to the House. And the Minister, Nick Smith, made it very clear that the government is taking a cautious approach, and I would like to endorse that cautious approach because it's really important, as I say, not only for the people of Canterbury but for all New Zealanders, that the governance of ECANS is absolutely stable and working functionally. Now, it was a pity, I think, for the House to have to listen to two Labor speeches now from members who are still clearly in denial about the state of affairs that was in place at Environment Canterbury prior to the appointment of the commissioners in 2010. In fact, it's well known, Mr Speaker, that as late as the run-up to the 2008 general election, when the then Labor government in its dying death throes knew absolutely that there was a huge problem with Environment Canterbury and refused to do anything about it. That they refused to take a lead and work to solve what were enormously difficult challenges and problems with dysfunctionality, and simply, it wasn't so much, sir, that there were poor decisions being made, it was just that there were no decisions at all being made by Canterbury, the Environment Canterbury organisation. They were completely deadlocked and unable to move forward in terms of their planning for what is 70% of New Zealand's fresh water resource. And, sir, that's a situation that simply couldn't be allowed by a responsible government to continue. So this bill establishes a sensible, in my view, mixed model approach, a transitional model, to ensure that when we go to local government elections in October this year, 7 elected and up to 6 appointed councillors will ensure that the momentum and the good, stable work that's been done by the commissioners, by the chair, Dame Margaret Blazey, and her fellow commissioners over the time of their appointment since 2010 is continued, and that their very good planning and structural work, not only in terms of fresh water, but also in terms of the contribution that Environment Canterbury is making to the rebuild and regeneration of Canterbury following the earthquakes, is maintained and continued. And I think that they need to be congratulated, as other speakers have done, and thanked for the very good work that they do. And I think that probably one of the great hallmarks of this time under the guidance and governance of commissioners has been the rebuilding of relationships in Canterbury, not only with other local government authorities and territorial bodies, but particularly with Ngāi Tahu. And, sir, at Select Committee I was delighted that we were able to make a recommended change that's been adopted in this bill to have Ngāi Tahu nominating 2 representatives. Originally, there was a plan that they would nominate 1. Ngāi Tahu came to us at Select Committee and suggested that they would like to nominate 3, and we agreed that probably there was a very good case for nominating 2. So Ngāi Tahu will nominate 2 commissioners, and they will then be appointed by the Minister. And I think that's a very good and sensible approach to be taken. Sir, ECAN was one of the country's worst, if not the worst, performing councils at the time the commissioners were appointed. It's really important for us as legislators that we do ensure that that momentum, that the work and the task that they are doing is continued. And I am very pleased that we as a select committee were able to work our way through those issues. We took an opportunity to visit Christchurch, to sit in Christchurch in the council chambers no less, and to hear from a range of very committed and passionate submitters, many of whom were, I think, making a point about how important it was that ECAN and its management and structure continue in the good way that it has been doing. And yes, of course, they were making a point that they want to revert to full elected representation. But, Sarah, I think that many of them actually did understand the need for a transitional phase so that all these good things could be continued in a way that didn't break that momentum. Sarah, as chair of the committee, it's a pleasure for me to support this bill in its third reading. I commend it to the House.
I call Eugenie Say.